Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first ever Mr. Hamilton on YouTube. Um, yeah, I don't actually have a YouTube name yet. My name, I guess, will just go with Mr. H. And I'm coming from the Hamilton basement here. Penny and I. So this is Penny. We're gonna, you know how I like. I'm used to kind of interacting with kids and with you guys. So Penny's gonna be my interaction for these videos. She's a little lethargic today. She's happy that we're around, but Penny will. I think she probably won't be the best trigonometry student, but we're gonna keep her here just to keep me in line here and a little bit more at home and comfortable with this. So. Welcome to Volume 1. What we're going to do here, you guys, over the next 8-9 video lessons is we're going to teach a new topic each day. Our topics are going to focus around trigonometry graphs. At the end, we'll have a short assessment on our delta math. Yeah, and that's it. So today, there's two big ideas that I want to talk about here. Let me rearrange a couple things here. So our big ideas, let's move this to the side. So our big ideas today, Penny's already gone. So our big ideas today, number one, we want to just introduce what trig graphs look like. We're going to look at two of them. We're going to sine and we're going to look at cosine. And then the second big idea is there's some terminology that we're going to slowly build. And so the terms I want you to walk away with today are amplitude and midline. So the first thing I'd like to show you guys is just basically some notes here. I want to show you the graphs of sines and cosines are what we call periodic in nature. That means this, that they repeat exactly in regular intervals. Those intervals are called cycles. The length of the cycle that's on the x-axis, that's called its period. So this is an example of a trig graph. This, by the way, is the cosine graph. So what the cosine graph looks like, it has these high and low points and it continues on like this forever. The graphs will have this middle spot, this middle axis. That's this axis right here. And that graph, that spot is called the midline. So each sine and cosine curve have what we call a midline, and we're going to identify that and find that today. The other thing that they do have is they go, so these highs and low points, and then this midline. So the other thing trig graphs have then is something called the amplitude. So our definition of amplitude is going to basically be the distance from the midline to the maximum. That'll always be positive. So we're going to go through a couple examples like that and then have you do some practice on some delta math stuff. So bear with me here. I'm going to minimize a couple things. All right, so here's our first one. It's to determine the equation of the midline of the following graph. Penny, you ready for this? Exciting. So to find the midline of the equation, basically I identify my highs and my lows, and then I just find a distance right in between. That's why they call it the midline. So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4 units. That would make this midline right here. Now, one thing you got to know is midline would not just be -2. The midline is an equation of a horizontal axis. All horizontal lines are y equals. So there is the equation for the midline of this graph. Let's take a peek at another one here. So finding midline, again, we look at highs. Use a different color here. Here we go. Highs, lows. And then we find that distance, and then we find the middle of that distance. So this is 2 units to the x-axis, another 4 units down. That's a distance of 6. So if I count from the top 1, 2, and 3, my midline is going to be right in between here. That occurs at -1. Again, make sure you write this in the form of an equation. Y equals -1. Right, Penny? The other thing that we want you guys to be able to do now is from these midlines, we want you guys to describe another term. Another term we're looking at is the amplitude. If we go back to that definition, the amplitude is the distance from this midline to the high value. So we're gonna, once we identify the midline, we'll count up. That's a distance of 2 units. So our amplitude for this graph is just 2. No need for an equation. It's just a numerical value. Do another one here. So in this graph, we found the midline. The midline's at -1. Here's your high value. So if we count up, that's 1, 2, and 3. So our amplitude of this graph is 3. So wrapping this up, you guys, here's an example where we ask you to do both. Find the midline and the amplitude. So the midline, again, difference from the distance from the top to the bottom. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. The middle value would be 2 units from the top or 2 from the bottom. Little sneaky one, if it's on the x-axis, is y equals 0. That's exciting. The last but not least, the amplitude is distance from the midline to the high spot, which is 2. And that's it today, you guys. We just want you to do those 2 pieces. Want to familiarize yourself with what these curves look like. They're periodic. They continue forever. They have 1 cycle length before they repeat. We'll talk more about that. But most importantly, finding this middle line value here and then finding the amplitude. Okay, Pen? That's it today. So let's sign off. So until next time, friends, stay clean, wash your hands, disinfect your phones, and also be kind.